It is 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I'll call to order the second monthly meeting of the Hendersonville City Council, May 28, 2025. We have the agenda, and is there anything anyone would like added to or removed from the agenda? Got a motion to approve?
Madam Mayor, I move that we accept the agenda as given.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not those in favor of the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. We're set with our agenda and start with our presentations. Okay. Mr. Manley, you can start us out?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council, it's good to see you all. I'm gonna be brief, but I do want to take a minute to introduce Susan Enright Hicks, who is a recent graduate of the Public Affairs program at Western Carolina University. She reached out to us as she was trying to identify her capstone project to see what we might need help with. And I believe literally earlier the morning of the day that she reached out to us, I had been on the phone with our representative from AARP talking about our age-friendly community designation and how that was going, what our next steps were, and was kind of, gently being nudged that we needed to work on this action plan. And so serendipitously, Susan reached out and she was very interested in helping us put that plan together. And so she's going to walk through at a high level how we've structured that plan, and then we can talk a little bit about bringing that forward for formal adoption with some final tweaking. And then if there's any thoughts or anything you want to share with us on that topic, we'll be glad to hear it. So Susan, if you want to come on up.
Thanks, Matt. So as Matt just said, my name is Susan Enright Hicks. I'm pleased to be here with you all. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, Mr. Conant, and Council for inviting me to share my work. So this is
You got it.
it just busted. Oh, okay. Sorry. You all can see what I'm.
Yeah.
Thank
There's
you.
a screen down here.
Fantastic. And I can see it too, that's so handy. Thank you. So here's just an overview of my presentation. I'm just gonna go through some acknowledgements, a little bit of the background, our process, and the contents of the plan itself. First, I'd like to acknowledge that I couldn't have done any of this work without the considerable help and sponsorship of your community development team. Matt and Tyler were very generous with their time and some advice. And I also have to acknowledge that I got a lot of help from members of the community, stakeholders at AARP, Party Hospital, et cetera. So I met with Alicia Evans at the Council of Aging, Rebecca Chaplin from the AARP Mountain Region, Steve Studebaker with the North Carolina Senior Tar Heel legislation, and Milton Butterworth, as well as some older community members through the Council on Aging's community development lunches, community congregate lunches, thank you. And they were very generous with their thoughts. So I really appreciate that. You all might be aware that Hendersonville is regarded as a lovely place to retire or grow older, as evidenced by the fact that you all have seen going through your comp plan and other community documents and surveys. There's a demographic trend, not just in Hendersonville, but throughout the US, of folks getting older and living longer. Hendersonville was estimated in 2023 as having 42% of your community over age 55 and over, as compared to, say, North Carolina statewide, which is closer to 30. So this is definitely part of your community, and Matt and the other planners obviously recognize that and started their work towards getting that age-friendly distinction from AARP. Joining the network was the first step in Joining the network is the first step in this age-friendly program process as part of that distinction from AARP. So you've got your enrollment, done. The next part of the process is a community needs assessment, which Matt and the others sort of did as part of your Gen H comprehensive plan and those other recent documents that have been put together. So they already felt like I had a good sense of the adult community perspective. Which brings us to developing an action plan. So that's where we are now. If you all feel like the document that I've put together fits your community and represents what you want going forward, then you could submit that to ARP for their approval. And beyond that, the idea is to then, of course, implement some of the ideas in the plan, and eventually you'll have to reevaluate, come back, shift, go forward, and so on. Another requirement of the plan is to establish a way for older residents in all stages to have input in the age-friendly process of your community. I think Matt had some thoughts on how that might be possible. Matt and Tyler pointed me to in the direction of ARP's resources and guides, of which there are ever so very many. We decided to use their notion of domains of livability as the framework on which to build this age-friendly project, age-friendly community plan. As you can see, they sort of divide it between the built environment and the social environment. So starting at the top there, like the first three are outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation and housing, and then civic participation and employment, communication and information, respect and social inclusion, social participation, and finally health services and community support. So this is the kind of guiding document in which we decided to use as the underpinnings as the work we did going forward. And of course, I had access to all of the wonderful, beautiful, comprehensive plan and your bicycle plan, your pedestrian plan, your greenworks plan, all of the community development documents, which are so easily accessed on your website, so bravo you. Because all of those have been redone so recently, it was really very easy for me to find the information that I needed about what already exists here in Hendersonville and about your demographics, and also to know that that information had been looked at recently and was still up to date and met with your current intentions. I started by taking the short-term implementation plan and kind of coding it according to those ARP domains of livability. So for instance, you can see that top piece, you all call it vibrant neighborhoods in the comp plan and associated documents. Those boxes to the left, the 8 boxes, represent the different 8 domains. So I coded it, so like one is green spaces and outdoors. So everything with a yellow flag there would relate to, or could be seen as related to the outdoors. 2 is transportation, 3 is housing, and so on. Once I had them coded, we were able to pull them into a more narrative framework where I could give some perspective on best practices as well as why this is an important aspect of life. And so we have a portion of the document for each one of the domains. Each is several pages long and includes, like I said, resources on what's already in existence and why it's important, as well as some suggestions for what could make a more robust domain in that area, if you all wanted to take some suggestions for ideas going forward, how that might be expanded. The document concludes with a planning grid, sort of going back to that notion of connecting it to the Gen Ed plan and associated documents. So you can see each one of these ideas has a priority level, which would have already been previously established and approved by council, as well as, you can see the reference to the Gen Ed plan there specifically and where it fits, the project name, and a short description. The idea is that this document, if approved, would be added to the community development documents, which could then be added to the Achieve It software. You see that little tracker table there. The Achieve It software, whoops, I just accidentally clicked it backwards. The Achieve It software is a handy tool for allowing things to be spread between departments and also gives you that nice visual tick marks of how far along any particular project might be. So it's got a nice dashboard, which is easy to read. So that brings me to the conclusion of the document as it stands now, with projects that you have already approved in the past, just sort of broken down by domain and how they might fit into an age-friendly concept. I would like to draw your attention to the idea that in each section, there are also potential suggestions for further work that could be done in those various domains. If you remember the circle with the built environment and then the social aspects, for instance, you all already have a lot of projects in that built environment, which makes sense. The community development department would be affiliated with those things or concerned with those matters. And often a few less supports in some of those other social aspects coming from the city itself. Now, obviously, there are community partners and other organizations that can help fill those boxes as well, which have been noted in the document when I could find them. But there are further suggestions that might be useful. Some of them are a little bit of a reach, like perhaps finding the wherewithal to put together a senior center. That's kind of a big project. But there are lots of things that could be done in a far more frictionless way or would be a much smaller step, such as just communicating with residents about SNAP benefits or nutritional support, finding partnerships with maybe Blue Ridge Community College has a construction services or construction skills department, and maybe that would be a nice partnership towards helping residents get some of the updates or repairs needed to their homes. Recruiting tech savvy folks to do a digital literacy skills workshop. Or, we recently learned about the importance of disaster preparedness. Obviously, it's important for everyone, but it can be especially challenging for older individuals who maybe have mobility issues or physical limitations, or perhaps, are on lots of medications, et cetera. So having a preparedness plan or working with them on a preparedness go bag can be especially useful for that community. And of course, making sure that your public and public parks, both those owned by the city and those that are more open to community, are ADA accessible when possible and have pleasant places to sit and rest when needed. Any questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Any questions right now?
Great. I just want to thank Susan for doing a great job pulling all this together. So thank you very much. You've done a wonderful job. You've been a great asset. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you've helped us further our commitment to being an age-friendly community. So thank you for that. In terms of next steps, just briefly, I've been trying to figure out, how we may handle it going forward. I think where I'm sitting now is that we may convene. There's a group of stakeholders that have been working. It's kind of slowed down since Helene, but there was a coalition of folks that work in this area that service the older adults. And there's some key stakeholders that you all are familiar with. And I think my suggestion would be that we convene a group of those folks to look over what we've compiled together, look at some of the suggestions for how we may go above and beyond just what's in the Gen H plan to bolster some of the other domains, get their feedback, and then bring that kind of tweaked document back to you all for potentially adopting that as a formal action plan sometime later on this summer. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Matt, I
Yes.
assume some of this can be inserted in the discussion as we look at the Whitmire Center and the Patton Park area with the consultants that we're looking at as we look at bringing those two facilities back to life. Some of that.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely going to be aspects of the goals and the domains that are going to help be accomplished through those projects, and we
Making
can
sure that
inform it.
that stakeholder group is plugged into that process. And
Definitely, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Historic Preservation Commission Awards and Annual Report.
Yes. So I am just going to briefly introduce this next activity. So we have our Historic Preservation Commission members here. So they're first gonna give away 3 Historic Preservation Awards, and then our chair will give a brief annual report on the activities over the last year. So I'll turn it over to them.
Well, first off, we haven't given these awards since before COVID. So this is sort of a rekindling of some of the things that we would like to think that we can do in a positive sense. And the first residential award actually goes to, it's listed in the documentation as the Fulbright House, which is now resided with Sean and Evie Fuller, who are with us here today. And the reason for this is that they've moved into the neighborhood in 2016 and have done a really good job of maintaining and improving both the house and the landscape. But in my own mind, probably more importantly, building a community in Hyman Heights. Evie was instrumental in basically a text group that actually gets together, and there's a house right now, but it's a instantaneous way for the neighborhood to communicate when we need to. It's also a way to organize the summer parties, and we actually have through Evie's encouragement a Sunday brunch that happens every 6 to 8 weeks that draws anywhere from 30 to 40 members of the community. Different every time, but it's a way to actually build community, which I think is what the HPC and I know Hendersonville wants to encourage in the neighborhood. So Sean and Evie, if you'll come up, we have a little award for you here. And this is a little recognition of that, and you will also get when we get them, you will get a little brass plate to go on the front of your house. The City of Hendersonville Preservation.
I'm so proud of
So,
her. I'm so proud of our neighborhood.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Rafa.
Freddie's gonna take a photo.
Okay.
So Jim and Ralph and Cheryl, do y'all wanna
We can.
Okay.
come up and?
Yeah, let me hold that badge.
Oh, thank you. All right, 1, 2, 3, I'm gonna take a couple. Thank you.
Well, the next award actually goes to a commercial building award, and that's the King and Allen Building with Andrew Riddle and Riddle Development, and I believe Denise is here to accept the award, but this, in my mind, again, goes back to, we haven't done this since before COVID, but touring their open house that they did a couple weeks ago was actually quite amazing with what they did with the terrazzo floor, restoring a lot of the interior. If you went into the offices, the brickwork on the outside of the building is exposed into the offices to maintain the character of the building. And there's certainly a history wall in there that explains the Ford dealership. So I think it's an excellent example of adaptive reuse for a building in Hendersonville, and something that we need to keep encouraging, and I think we are encouraging. So Denise, if you'll come up, let's do more pictures.
Okay. All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Now it's your turn.
It's my turn now.
And I have the privilege and honor of presenting the first ever, first annual, I guess we'll say, Cultural Heritage Award. So the Cultural Heritage Award we established to honor exceptional individuals, organizations, or projects dedicated to preserving, promoting, and celebrating the rich tapestry of Hendersonville's history and cultural diversity. The Cultural Heritage Award was established to posthumously honor Crystal Cawley, an historic preservation commissioner and community leader who was passionate about telling the history of all our communities in the city of Hendersonville. I had the privilege of working with Crystal for several years, and she was that person when she came into the room, just lit it up. She was passionate about what she did, but she was also so kind and generous of both her talents and her time. And we were just honored to have her on for the period that we did. It was much short of a period, too short of a period, but just an incredible person. And I will never forget when we started looking at historic communities, we would talk about it, and Crystal, by the next day, would email all this information. And she knew everyone. And so we were so fortunate to have her help us create some areas to recognize, and then we're also working to get those recognized in the past because it's a long process. But I think, one of my favorite memories of her is just she would pop up every time and say, "What do you need? I'll do it." And she did. And so it is with great honor that we thought most fitting to bestow the first one on the person it's named after. So to all her family and friends who are here, thank you for sharing her with us. And I don't know who's going to accept it, but
Stand in the front, it's a bigger group.
It's okay if I say something.
sure, absolutely.
On behalf of Crystal's family and all of her loved ones, which she had many, and on behalf of Crystal Stair, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, Crystal Clear Stair Association, we want to thank Mayor Vogt for her contributions. Even now, she's contributed to Crystal Clear Stair, which is an association which is going to allow us to finalize her funeral and to start a scholarship on her behalf. So we thank you, Mayor Vogt, for all you're doing and all you have done.
Thank you. All right. You take a photo. Might help if it's not pointing at me. Right, 1, 2. I take a couple. Awesome. Thank y'all.
Well, we appreciate the work of the committee, the commission, and all of those who received the awards, just making our community that much more vibrant and exciting to live in. Thank you.
Thank you. So we can go briefly on this. You want to go first, John?
I think,
There you go.
yeah, the main activities for the committee has been the annual cookie caper, which is very popular with folks. We do the Historic Preservation Commission coloring books. A little aside there, I was up in Ohio visiting my family this last couple of weeks, and we talked about one of my nieces is a third grade teacher there, and she talked about distributing coloring books. And she went, "Wow, that's nice, because they give me one and I have to make copies for all of ours." So, but we also have participated in the quasi-judicial training that is basically required for the state. And the 7th Avenue unveiling, we had a nice little presence there as the recognition of that district.
So from post-lien recovery, I don't think any of us in this part of the state realized exactly what it would mean to have a hurricane come through and have to restore houses quickly, but especially historic homes. So we're super grateful to the city and SHPO for guiding us through that and helping us come up with some ways to help get quick relief to them. But we did create, or HPC created a webpage with resources for homeowners and building owners. The staff conducted a survey of each of the historic districts to check on the properties. Staff also worked closely with property owners of severely damaged properties to find fast solutions for their damaged properties.
As part of the rest of our operations, we issued 42 certificate of appropriatenesses. And I think highlighted here is one of the more exciting things that we're looking at that has just come before the committee. So that's a very positive step forward again for Main Street. And the the upcoming year is really looking for an issue that we've been working on for a while, is to try and do some realtor training with the realtors and their responsibilities when they're selling homes in a historic district. Because a lot of them don't realize that they do have some legal responsibilities there. We're looking at doing a Halloween event cemetery tour at the Oakdale Cemetery to raise some more funds. And in February, March, we're still working this out, a loft tour of some of the downtown residences. And also continuing to work on the neighborhood history research projects to document 5 more of the historic neighborhoods in the city.
And I'm gonna touch on that one real quick. So this is one of the projects that Crystal and I worked on together starting. And she was just instrumental in helping us kind of figure out where these communities were. And Sam with staff helped us get a federal grant to work on those. So we are proud to be able to continue trying to recognize these. And the other piece that's come along with it is we've started a collection drive to collect stories from people in these communities, because so much of it is oral history. And we found out more than a few times that when those people pass, the stories go too. And so we're excited to have that coming about, another chance to blend communities and collect information. So.
You wanna keep going?
Sure.
This is kind of yours.
So landmark designations is one of the things that historic preservation is tasked with, trying to identify landmarks, get them recognized. And so we have some that are in the works. We've been working with Waverly Inn, the Elizabeth Lee Inn, Lenox Spring Park, and the Gregory House. And then also working with property owners to start the National Register process. We recently did a tour of Oriole Mill, and it's a fascinating property. It is under contract and gonna sell soon, but it was really cool to see it and how much of the original pieces and structural integrity are still there, along with like the apple pack houses and the stories that went with that. So we are hopeful to have some of these landmarks and properties on local designation and or National Register in the near future. And we just want to say a formal thank you for everything, because without you all, we wouldn't be here and wouldn't be able to do what we love. So we thank you, and for what it contributes to the city, and also personally, I know I'm appreciative to it because I geek out on this stuff, so it's fun. So thank you all for everything.
Thank you for your work. I know you all put in lots of hours and don't always get recognized. So we're glad to have the awards back.
Yes.
And glad to have your report letting us know what all you're doing.
And if you have anything you'd like us to look into, let us know and we'll be happy to. Thank you all. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next we have a draft stormwater master plan. And there it is.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. So now we can talk about our historic stormwater system. Some parts of it I think would fall under a designation if they were known about. But I do have the pleasure of introducing Tom Murray. He's the stormwater program manager with WK Dixon, who is the consultant that we've been working with on the stormwater master plan. Tom's gonna take the majority of the presentation, but I'll be up here to answer any questions, and I have a couple slides that I'll be jumping in on, so. Tom?
Thanks, Mike. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. Excited to talk about stormwater, even though we have a nice sunny day outside, but there's never a bad time to get prepared for the impacts that we have within our stormwater system. So our agenda today is to give a brief background of where we've been over the last several years. Talk about phase 1 of the project, which was the strategic asset management plan, then dive into the comprehensive master planning process, followed up by a few project examples, how we prioritize those projects, and where do we go from here?
I'll jump in right here, just to provide some background for our newer council members and also the council members that have been with us for a while. So back in 2018, the city engaged in the pilot watershed study in the Wash Creek sub-watershed, which is the west part of downtown out to almost Laurel Park. And we focused on that area because in prior years we had some failures of the system in that area, and that is still to this day predominantly where we receive calls, requests for assistance from. So that's where we wanted to focus our initial efforts. That pilot watershed study identified $7 million in capital needs just in the Wash Creek subwatershed. And it also really helped us develop our GIS database. So that consultant did the first round of asset inventory, identifying pipes, inlets, culverts, the various parts of the stormwater network very accurately, and then also collecting some initial condition data and things like that. So really built the foundation of our stormwater GIS database, which is what has allowed us to get to the point where we can do this comprehensive master planning effort. Because of the amount of capital needs just in that subwatershed that were identified in 2018, the following year, we began the process of a stormwater rate study. That was 2019. We were close to the end of the rate study in 2020, and COVID happened, and we didn't feel it was the appropriate time to implement a new rate right there when COVID first happened. So we finally implemented our utility rate structure in 2021 and developed a preliminary rate model that was based on a capital improvement estimate of $36 million. That was across the entire city, and we based that on what was discovered in Wash Creek as well as the data that we had for the other subwatersheds in the city. Then we expanded on our GIS database by doing 2 phases of an asset inventory, which is, again, we went to the other parts of the city, collected detailed data on the stormwater system, condition data, looking at materials, location, elevations, all that information that's needed to do things like modeling. And then we began the comprehensive master plan process. So phases 1 through 3, which Tom will discuss briefly, were to develop a strategic asset management plan and also do kind of a gap analysis of where we were and where we wanted to get. And so that was phases 1 through 3, and now we're currently wrapping up, I'd say, phase 8 or 9. If we look at the detailed scope of work. So now we're at the point where we have done the modeling and have started to identify projects, and I'll let Tom speak more to that process, but that kind of gives a background of how we got to where we are today.
Appreciate it, Mike. So we started out this process, which was phase 1 of this project, was to complete a strategic asset management plan. And what that really is, as Mike alluded to, a lot of work had been done in the previous, especially 7 or 8 years within the stormwater program. So this was a holistic evaluation of everything related to the stormwater program, how your community is kind of operating within its stormwater utility, and then to dive into 4 specific dimensions in a little bit more detail. And those are the infrastructure data management. That's part of the data collection that Mike talked about, is going out and collecting that data on your stormwater infrastructure. A policy framework, a review of your policies related to your stormwater program planning and implementation, which is going to be the majority of what we talk about today, and then also the asset criticality development. So in brief, some of the findings from the stormwater asset management plan related to the infrastructure data management is first that you do already have, based on that previous work, a robust database, and that forms the foundation of your stormwater operations. So it can be as simple as, until that work was completed, we didn't know where all of our pipes were located, how they connect together, how big they are, what are they made of, how deep are they? Are they metal pipes that are nearing the end of their useful life? Are they rusted out in the bottom? all of that information kind of helps us get that foundation of the program so that we can better understand the system. But like any infrastructure database, it's not a static environment, right? Everything is continuing changing. It's a dynamic environment, so we want to make sure that we're maintaining the data in a timely manner as we move forward. So you're not in the position of 10 years from now going out and having to recollect a bunch of information. So one way in which we do that is one recommendation is to include digital data submissions with new development. And that's where the developer actually provides the data back to city staff in the database format that the data currently resides. So then it's almost a plug and play. You can just put that data straight into the database. Otherwise, you're going to have city staff that are manually entering the data. They might be going out and taking their own measurements, and it just slows down the efficiency of the process. The next component is to be consistent and proactive in condition assessment. A lot of this work is currently going on, but we want to make sure that we're prioritizing the condition assessment in an appropriate manner. The condition assessment, a lot of that is the CCTV investigation, where you actually put a camera into the pipe and you're able to see the condition of it. So we can only see so much from the surface, but if you actually run a camera through the pipe, then you can see if there's defects in the pipe that cause concern that might indicate the asset is not performing as you would like, or that even failure could be nearing the end of its useful life. And then the last component of this dimension is integrating with CityWorks. CityWorks is your asset management software that covers all of your assets, or can cover all of your assets within the city. So one example of this would be, let's say you have a street repaving plan, you have a stormwater maintenance plan. Let's make sure those are talking together. So what you don't want to do is repave a street and then 5 years later come back and dig it up to replace a stormwater pipe. So what if we were able to overlay those within your asset management framework so that you could prioritize projects looking at all of your assets and not just one? So you don't want to look at stormwater in a silo. You look at stormwater with your sidewalk plan, your pedestrian plan, your repaving plan, and all of the other hard assets that you're managing as a city. The second element is the policy framework. You have, and those really break down, the way we look at stormwater policies is twofold, is extent of service and level of service. So extent of service is where do you maintain your stormwater system? So almost all communities maintain the system within the public right-of-way. That's pretty standard. But stormwater doesn't follow right-of-way, it doesn't follow property lines, and so you're going to go on to private property, back to public, private, public, private, public. So understanding where we're responsible for maintaining infrastructure is important. One of those elements is if there is a private drainage easement that the city is responsible for maintaining, you have to maintain that infrastructure within that easement. But it's important to have a database that shows us easily where that is. A lot of easements are recorded, but they're not in a digital database that is easy for city staff to understand where all of those easements are located. So working on developing that database would be helpful. Further refining your level of service to provide further definition and develop KPIs, or key performance indicators. And so what that can mean is, if we're maintaining the system, how often are we maintaining it? Are we cleaning out catch basins every 5 years, every 2 years? What does that level of service look like? The other piece of that is, how much stormwater do we want to be able to convey within our system? So the typical industry standard is to provide a 10-year level of service for your closed pipe infrastructure and a 25-year level of service at roadway crossings. One key distinction on the 10-year storm, the 25-year storms, a lot of these elements are kind of thrown, or this vernacular is thrown out there. It's important to understand it's really a statistical determination that a 10-year storm does not mean it happens once every 10 years. It means that there is a 10% chance of that storm occurring in any given year. So we always hear, how come we had 3 100-year storms in a row? It's statistics, and those statistics are constantly evolving. Again, we're not talking about static. We're talking about, as storms occur, those statistics are going to change a little bit. The third piece, and is gonna be the core of our presentation, is the program planning and that comprehensive master planning with a prioritized capital improvement plan. And the goal of that, again, is to identify specific projects, prioritize those projects, and that's gonna help support both internal and external funding requirements. It's also gonna help support collaboration with other entities. So for instance, if you have a project that has additional infrastructure within the DOT right away, it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna implement that project today. But if DOT decides they're gonna widen the road 5 or 10 years from now, you already have this project identified so that you can go back and say, hey, can we partner on providing more capacity under the DOT right away? So that's one function of this process. When you talk about external funding, certain projects are gonna fit better in a grant than others. And so sometimes a grant opportunity comes up and you wanna have that project ready to apply for those grant funds. So again, another good reason to have all of these projects identified and prioritized appropriately. And then the fourth piece is asset criticality development. So a stormwater asset is your physical structure. So it could be a stormwater manhole, it could be a catch basin in the street, any structure related to your stormwater infrastructure. It's also a pipe, the pipes that connect between those structures, as well as your open stream and open channel system. What the focus of this piece is to prioritize short-term and long-term maintenance operations so that you can maintain your system in a proactive manner. Because if you run to failure, that's going to be more costly in the long term and impact your community. So an example for that is if you're able to maintain and rehabilitate a stormwater pipe under a roadway, you can extend the life of the project or of the asset. But if you let that asset just go until it fails, then you have a street closure, you have a risk to public safety, and it's going to become much more costly to have a contractor come in to an emergency situation and repair that pipe. But if you're able to maintain it and proactively plan for replacement of that pipe, it's going to be much less costly in the long run. And again, the graphic shows that this is not a static process. This is a dynamic cyclical process where you'll assess the criticality based on the likelihood and consequence of failure. You'll prioritize your operations, complete condition assessment, repair, replace, maintain, possibly no action, just monitor, and then cycle back into the criticality and reprioritize based off of the information that you've collected. So it's a routine operation and maintenance process that occurs just as your daily operations of your stormwater program. So the next step was to jump into the comprehensive master planning. And what we mean by that is, number one, is to holistically look at all of the watersheds in the city and come up with a process so that we can evaluate each watershed similarly. So when you're getting projects that come out of these watershed plans, you can rank and prioritize those projects throughout the city, even if those studies are occurring at different times. So for instance, you might focus on Wash Creek and Mud Creek and then Britton Creek in the future, but you want to be able to have that comparison across the city. The focus of this study is really going to be on the infrastructure that we're talking about, both from a lack of capacity standpoint, which results in an increased risk of flooding, but also that condition aspect, knowing that we do have aging infrastructure, right? We have pipes in the ground that are 60, 70, 80 years old, and we know that they're not going to last forever. So again, we want to move into that proactive management component. And then ultimately have that prioritized capital improvement plan with those cost estimates to begin the implementation phase of the project. So as we were going through this process, Mike and his team were able to apply for some funding to start the watershed planning process through the LASSI grant program that's administered by the Division of Water Infrastructure. So that was a great way to springboard into the master planning process, because you did receive a $400,000 grant for the watershed planning process. We did want to focus on the high criticality watersheds that we did identify in the strategic asset management plan. And we identified those watersheds by looking at some of the likelihood factors, likelihood of needs within those watersheds. So that's known flooding problems, that's the asset density, just how much infrastructure do we have in those areas, asset age, if we can estimate that, and then just looking at the impervious areas. So we're really focusing on some of the more developed areas within the city where we know we have infrastructure issues. And then the consequence factors would be looking at what are the impacts if we have failures in those locations. So looking at city roads, critical facilities, socioeconomic impacts, and the development density. We targeted a little over 1.5 square miles within the city, and it's a little bit washed out on the screen, but you can see there's some yellow areas within the city limits there that are really focused on the center of town within the Wash Creek Basin, as well as some watersheds in the Mud Creek Basin as well, for where we wanted to start and prioritize. In future phases, you can then move further out into the city, and then some of your needs may change as you get to the outer limits. They're not going to have the same issues that you have in the downtown areas. Through this process, we looked at 3 main elements. I'm going to go through each of those. It's a modeling component where we modeled 20 linear miles of drainage pipes and open system within those areas to determine what is the capacity of the system today. So how much, when it rains 4 inches, when it rains 5 inches, what is the impact to your stormwater system? Is it all being conveyed within the system, or do you have flooding where water is going over land instead of into the pipe? And what are the property impacts from those different events? We have inundation areas mapped for each project. So you can think of an inundation area as the floodplains that you see on the much larger streams. Again, we're focused higher up in the localized infrastructure, but you're going to see inundation areas that look like a flood zone map. We also did stream assessments for approximately 9 miles of open channels in streams, because again, the system is not all piped. It's going to go from a pipe segment to a stream segment, back to a pipe segment. Because we are in a developed area, because we have high flows and high velocities from these storm events, the streams begin to erode. So our stream assessments that we walked all 9 miles were identifying areas where you start to have threats to infrastructure, i.e. the stream is eroding very close to a roadway. Now you have, if it erodes further, you're going to start having impacts to the roadway, or you may have an exposed sanitary sewer line, or you may have a threat to a residential structure or a house. So those are some of the elements that we were looking for in the stream assessments. So the hydraulic modeling component, again, we evaluated a series of storm events to try to understand what is the risk of flooding. The model is able to show the location of flooding. It's able to show the depth of flooding. So if you look on the screen, the warmer colors, the yellows and the oranges and the reds, are deeper areas of flooding. So why is this important? Well, we know that we can't just go in and wave a magic wand and fix all of our stormwater problems tomorrow. So where do we want to focus? If you have an inch of water overflowing a roadway, the risk is not as high. People can drive through an inch of water. If it only you can also see how long the flooding lasts. So if it only lasts 15 minutes, is that your highest priority area? It may not be. But if you have a foot of flooding that lasts for an hour or 2 hours and impacts a large neighborhood, that might be a higher priority area that we want to look at implementing a project. So we're able to kind of assess that risk within the system corridor. And we're also able to identify houses where we know that and those are shown in red on the screen, but houses, structures, commercial buildings, where we're able to show you might have some flooding impacts. Now, we didn't go out and do surveyed finished floor elevations at this point, so we don't really know if there's water in the structure, but we know it's getting up to or adjacent to the structure based on the modeled storm event. The stream assessments, we talked a little bit about what we look for. So again, we identified and prioritized areas where the sections shown in red are the highest impacted, where we might want to have some interventions. Orange, and then yellow is more moderate. Within developed areas, you're going to have impacts to streams. You're not going to have a pristine stream environment within these developed areas that we looked at. And again, we were focused predominantly on providing additional safety to existing infrastructure, while also integrating those projects with our the modeling component and the closed system improvements. And these are just some examples of stream erosion that we identified on the project. On the picture on the bottom left, on the left side, you can see that bank erosion getting closer and closer to the street. And so as you have larger storm events, you're going to see that erosion creep out closer to the stream, or to the street, I'm sorry. The picture in the middle is one of the backyard channels or streams that goes pretty much along the parcel line between two properties. But again, the erosion is getting closer and closer to having tangible property impacts on those residential areas. On the bottom right, it's a little bit hard to see, but that bump out is a sanitary sewer manhole. So there we go. That's a sanitary sewer manhole where you see it starting to erode around that structure. And so, number one, that's going to potentially impact the viability of the sanitary sewer system itself, and then it can also cause, if there's damage to that manhole or sanitary system, you're going to start getting leakage into the stream as well. So you can start to see some of those impacts from stream erosion. And then the picture on the top right is bank erosion near a city park. And so that bank is going to get it closer and closer to your park infrastructure, which again is a public health and safety issue for the users of the park. The third main element we've talked already a little bit about is the asset criticality, again focusing on the likelihood and consequence of failure. So an asset with a high criticality would have both a high likelihood of failure and a high consequence of failure. So how do we look at that? So a high likelihood of failure may be, we've already seen through visual condition assessment that the structure is in poor condition. It may be that it is a metal pipe where it's rusted out in the bottom and you're starting to see the preliminary findings of failure that could potentially come. So that would be a high likelihood of failure. High consequence of failure would be, is it crossing under a major city street, or is it in somebody's backyard and it's only affecting one property owner? So those are going to have different consequences. How many people are you impacting? What is the risk to public health and safety? And so the exhibit on the screen there again shows the red pipes, or the red lines are a stormwater pipe that has a high criticality score. The green pipes have a low criticality score. And just to give you a few examples, the picture on the left again would have a higher likelihood but a lower consequence. So it's a smaller metal pipe. You can see the outlet of the pipe is kind of being held up by some 2x4s and other wood structures that are failing. But if it does fail, the consequence is not quite as high as the picture in the middle of the screen, which is a corroding metal pipe going under a city street. So that would be kind of the difference there when you think about consequence. And then on the flip side, the picture on the far right, very low likelihood. It's a very new concrete box culvert in good condition. Could use a little bit of maintenance as far as just clearing out some of the debris, but that just goes when the picture happened to be taken. But if it did fail, it would have a high consequence. It's a major roadway. So that's kind of how you start to prioritize, okay, where do we want to spend some of our O&M efforts? Where do we want to go get more information, right? Sometimes it doesn't mean you have to tear out the pipe and replace it. It may be you complete the CCTV and you say, hey, I think this looks good, but I'm going to put it on the list to come back in 2 years to recheck and see what condition it's in. Yes, ma'am.
When were these photos taken?
It was before the storm, so it was probably last summer, I would say, spring to summertime. is when we collected most of that information, I believe.
Yeah.
So we talked about the modeling, the flood capacity, the stream assessments, and the asset criticality. That's gonna help us form our capital project list. So what that includes is for each of the projects where we've seen an elevated flood risk during a 10-year storm, we developed a conceptual plan that was to reduce the risk of flooding, address aging infrastructure, and some of the stream stability issues that we talked about. We then we made sure that we remodeled those projects so that we could assess what the benefits of a given project are. So, right, we want to understand if we make this investment, how many people are we benefiting, and what is the financial impact of that. So here would be an example of the type of projects that we typically include for these infrastructure projects. They're likely going to include replacing existing pipes with larger pipes. It's going to include repairing failing infrastructure. If we can, we try to relocate failing private infrastructure to the public right away if it makes sense. That's going to provide more accessibility and ability to maintain the system for your team into the future. And then we also look at stream stabilization. That's from the stormwater side. We also want to understand when we start to look at what does a project cost, it's not just replacing the pipe, because we know we're going to have street impacts, we're going to have curb and gutter, we're going to have sidewalks, we're going to have other utility conflicts. So all of your utilities are kind of crisscrossing down the street, and so when you go in and replace storm infrastructure, you may have to move some water and sewer lines, you might have private utility impacts as well. We're also going to have impacts to private properties. So when we start to look at what is a construction cost estimate, it's looking at the cost to do the entire project, not just to replace a stormwater pipe. Yes, ma'am.
Are there easement acquisition costs as well in these projects?
We do estimate based off of a percentage. So if it's a typical project, I would say, where we're not looking at acquiring an entire property for whatever reason, then yes, we go based off of percentage. I think as part of this plan, we might have had one parcel that we looked at where there was a pipe going under a house where we had the cost associated, the tax-based value for that structure included in the cost estimate in case the city wanted to proceed with acquisition. But yes, all of the quote-unquote soft costs are estimated and included in the overall project costs, which is going to include survey, it's going to include design, permitting, easement acquisition, legal fees, etc. Okay, so this is an example of an inundation map. This would be existing conditions as shown on the screen. So again, you're going to see the lighter blues is more shallow flooding. Then as you get darker colors, you're going to have more deeper flooding in those areas. And then the red buildings are those buildings that are currently at risk. And then as you slide over, we're looking at what the proposed condition would be if the projects are implemented. And so you can see the flood inundation area go down significantly. And then the green houses now would be those structures that are removed from that risk level for the 10-year storm event, if that makes sense. Oh, sorry, I'll go back. See if I can.
Oh gosh, don't even go back to that screen.
All right, so just one more time, we can put the slider, so just so that you now know what to expect. Again, you start to, as you slide it over, you see the inundation levels get significantly lower. And more areas come out of the flood inundation area. Most of the areas that are shown left as flood inundation areas are actually open streams and channels, and so water is supposed to be there. So if you look at, the area in the middle, that light blue, that's all within an existing channel before it goes under the roadway. On the far right, you do have a little bit of still light blue area in the roadway, and that just based off of constraints of the project, it wasn't economically feasible, but it's, again, the risk is significantly reduced, and the depth of flooding is significantly reduced. So then the next big step was to prioritize the projects. And so we prioritized them based off of a wide variety of factors. Obviously, public health and safety is very important. That's part of why we're doing the project. The severity of street flooding, cost effectiveness does play into our prioritization as well. Looking at the effective improvements, how many people are we benefiting by these projects? Implementation constraints, you can think of not how easy, but the complexity of implementing a project. So for instance, if you have a project that goes under a DOT crossing or maybe under a railroad, those are just more timely and difficult to implement because you're dealing with a lot of different stakeholders. Similarly, if you had permitting constraints, that might impact that score as well. Constructability looks at moving on the private property, how much room do you have to work, how difficult is it going to be on the contractor. And then we did prioritize based off of ownership. So we did focus on the public right-of-way first, but we do want to be cognizant of the impacts on private property as well. We identified 18 projects. For those projects that were larger in nature, we did look at phasing them as best we could so that you're then implementing a project in phases. And then again, the estimated cost is the total cost, which would include construction. It includes a healthy contingency at this point because we don't know when the project's going to be constructed. It's difficult to do cost estimating. Frankly, infrastructure costs have been across the board over the last 5 years, and I would expect that to continue. So we do put a 30% contingency on our construction costs and then also include an allocation for some of the easement acquisition costs, design, surveying, et cetera, all fall within that total project cost. The last item I wanted to touch on is we worked very closely with Mike and his team on how do we want to use this process moving forward. So while it's important to document the project, we didn't just want to have a report that was going to sit on the shelf that would be difficult for the city to use. So we worked very closely with Mike and Dustin to look at building this Experience Builder process, which is an online GIS tool. The reason we're using Experience Builder is because the city already has it. The city already uses it for other GIS applications, and it's very easy to build on to that. So we were able to develop some applications so that your project, which again is dynamic, is sitting in this dynamic framework where not only can a GIS user access the data, but it's online, and so city staff that may not have access to GIS can easily log into this online environment and be able to see the data. The modeling output, all of the hydraulic modeling that we completed is up on this application as well. So all of the analysis that we completed is on this framework that Mike and his team can easily look at any day of the week, can look at it on a mobile device, can look at it from home, can look at it wherever they like to. So now I'll just kind of run through what some of the features are. This is the city's site, so we're going to zoom through it quickly, but there's a lot of different applications already there, so we just added on to it. This is the stormwater framework where you can see different project areas highlighted. There's a lot of different data on here. Your infrastructure data is on there. Your condition assessment data is on there, so you can click on a specific pipe, you can find out the size, the condition, the criticality score. There's really as much data as you want to be able to see can be loaded on within this framework. Very easy to access for your team. We also included the level of service application. So again, this has your modeling output data housed in this environment, and you can query under a number of different factors. So you could say, I think within the Mud 03 watershed, for instance, show me all of the pipes that have flooding depths greater than 1 foot, and you can query based off of that. Or you can just have look at the data any number of ways that you would like to. And again, this is a dynamic process that allows your team, you can update it as projects are implemented, export the data back up to the site and be able to see the progress. This is the slider bar that I showed earlier, but for all the projects, you can see the existing and proposed improvements. So there you have existing, and then you can see if it's going to slide back, and you can see the proposed improvements for all of the different projects. Just a better visual tool than flipping through a report trying to figure out what page do I need to be on. And then finally, the part that a lot of people like is we can provide a project summary for each project where it's very easy to just click on a location and get a snapshot of what is the project. So if I want to go to Washoe 5, give me a quick summary of the project and what does it look like. So it's great for yourself to be educated when you're talking to residents. You can quickly go to the site and you can say, yes, here's what we're planning in this area. It also can help facilitate when you do apply for grants, for instance, and you need to quickly pull a project. It's already in a format that Mike and his team can quickly put into a grant application and apply for that funding source. So a lot of different usability with the tool, just trying to think of how we want to use this product moving forward instead of just having a report on the shelf. I've talked a lot, so I'm going to let Mike finish up, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Tom. Great overview. And again, we've got some time at the end for questions. So a lot of great work's been done so far. We've identified a lot of work that still needs to be done. And so, for the next steps, what we're looking at are how are we going to fund all of this? If you saw the number down there at the bottom of the 18 projects, it was $32 million. We don't generate that much revenue in the stormwater utility. We're working with our budget team and to identify opportunities. You all have been instrumental in helping us get our rate to where we need to be to help fund these projects. And so we're looking at what are our best strategies for funding projects. We have the prioritized list, but we also want to look even deeper at those prioritized projects. And with a list of $32 million, we can't tackle all of that. That's just not feasible. So even though we have our top 5, we also want to look at making sure that if the top 3 projects are in the same watershed, maybe we look at spreading them out and some of the strategies for how we implement those projects going forward. We also want to look at what future watersheds we want to study. So we've done the criticality of and studied the most critical watersheds. So what are our next steps from there? And then continue our condition assessment for the highest critical assets. So Tom mentioned the best way to determine what condition a pipe is through CCTV investigation. We have, one of the things I didn't mention in that background slide is that we have done some CCTV work previously before we started this project. And then we've also, over the past couple of years, bought our own CCTV equipment. Dustin, our stormwater technician, is certified in pipe assessment using CCTV equipment. So now that we have that list of the highest critical assets, we can go out and start doing deeper investigation to say, okay, this thing is getting close to failure, or hey, we need to put this on a monitoring schedule, or it needs some maintenance. It's not all the way at the end of its life. We could, some of the successful techniques we've used in the past are what are called pipe lining. So now that we have the modeling work that's been done, we can look at the pipe and say, well, it's performing in the 10-year level of service. So if we line it, we're not going to lose a lot of capacity of the pipe, and we'll extend the useful life of that asset. And so those are the next steps. We're not asking you to adopt anything tonight. Like I said, we just wanted to provide an update, let you know what Tom and his team and our team have been working on. I think that kind of summarizes it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have about the process or stormwater in general. Yes.
How extensive were your post-tilling assessments in this master plan?
So the scope of this master plan project did not include a post-Helene assessment or a condition assessment. We did go, if we identified things like if we were approached about sinkholes or things like that, we would go and do an investigation. Honestly, the system itself, we didn't see any major impacts. We didn't see lots of culverts getting washed out. We haven't seen large sinkholes opening up and things like that. We've had a couple smaller projects that have been identified through either people, calling and saying, hey, there's a sinkhole, or directly after the storm with the work that our public works team did identifying. But another piece of that is Helene, while it was a catastrophic flooding event, the rain came over in terms of stormwater a longer period of time. So when we really get calls about like catastrophic failures of the stormwater system is when we have these afternoon deluges, when it rains 2 inches in 30 minutes and it just like blasts through the system. That's when you really start to see the issues crop up, and that's typically when I get phone calls. And so we haven't seen a lot of failures of the stormwater system related to Helene, fortunately, but we are keeping a track on that. And we did go check, the areas that we knew or thought there might be issues. We did do some assessment on those areas, but we didn't find anything alarming.
So in your opinion, the criticality of the projects that are already listed, they should remain prioritized the same that they are in that report after Helene?
Yes, because there's a lot more that goes into that assessment than just, even during Helene, and that was another part of what Tom and I discussed is this project is the stormwater master plan and the improvements to the stormwater system are really geared towards, addressing impacts that will improve localized flooding. We're not gonna make any improvements to the stormwater system that would cause any appreciable impact on a 100-year flood event. It's just not possible. The system's not designed to have an impact on the 100-year storm. The 10-year, the 25-year storms, the more frequent storms where, as Tom mentioned, the 10-year level of service where a 18-inch pipe might get overtopped during a 10-year storm, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to improve. The Helene event, catastrophic event, how it impacts our planning for stormwater, I would say is not as we're not trying to plan for the 1,000-year storm event. We're trying to plan for the 10-year and the 25-year events.
So when I drive through the city and I see some of these streams now, I'm not sure how water moves through them efficiently at all. And I did not notice that being an issue as much, and maybe I'm just more aware of it now, but it definitely seems to me that a lot of these watersheds that we have are not moving water efficiently with tons of debris in them. And so I guess, in my opinion, if we are talking about funding sources, there is federal and state money that will be available for infrastructure improvements. And so these are the types of things that I would think would fall under that, and to be able to move water more efficiently in streams that I know have been impacted in this Wash Creek area, like just driving through the downtown area. So I just was wondering if that's possible to address some of that in the plan so that we can talk about some of this grant money.
Yeah, so there's several different grant and federal funding opportunities. There's the, debris removal, waterway debris removal, which is ongoing currently. And so they're currently working on Mud Creek, and the plan that I've heard is that they will then work on other smaller tributaries throughout the county. So they would go in and actually remove that debris from these waterways. For the infrastructure piece, the hard infrastructure, the pipes and those things, we are working on putting together some requests. There's a program called the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, and they've been requesting basically applications for projects that they could fund. They're looking for shovel-ready projects. We feel like a lot of these projects are at the point that we can make the justification that they could easily be shovel-ready, so we are looking at those, all funding opportunities.
And when you say they are working on them, who is they?
On the funding application or?
You were talking about the water debris.
So there's several, I don't know all of the contractors, but the county contracted with SDR and Debris Tech. And so they are kind of the two large contractors, and then they have subcontractors that work under them.
The county supervising that for all, under their master, that's part of the master recovery that they have with the debris removal companies.
And we feel good about how the waterways specifically are being handled?
Well, they're just started, they're just
Okay.
getting started,
Yeah, I've run into them a couple times on Mud Creek and from my experience, they've done an excellent job, because I've heard a lot of complaints from other counties about them having a very heavy hand and really taking too much out. And so, we did a stream cleanup 2 weeks ago on Mud Creek and actually ran into them when we were taking off, and they were removed, so we didn't run into any blockages or strainers or anything like that. And then they were this was at Berkeley Road, they were continuing down, I think, almost to the confluence, and they have, small barges that they're floating down Mud Creek and removing debris. Now, what they're, from what I've talked to them, coordinated with those contractors in Henderson County, is the next project area was Mills River because of the water intakes, and then they were going to go to, places like Wash Creek and Clear Creek and things like that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Questions?
Mike, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
It may not relate to this. If there's water, somewhat like a ditch is running between several pieces of property, the city had installed a partial pipe and it's erosion is occurring. Who's responsible for maintaining that or preventing the erosion? Would it be those homeowners? 'Cause neither homeowner owns that water that runs through there.
Right, so, we kind of address that on a case-by-case situation. We do have provisions in our utility ordinance that outline when the city will contribute funds or contribute work to addressing off right-of-way drainage issues. So the base policy is if it's not in a dedicated easement, then it is the responsibility of the property owner to maintain that. Now, part of the provisions in the utility ordinance state that, if the piece of infrastructure, in this case, the ditch or a stream, let's say it's a ditch, a stream, it gets a little more complicated. If it's a ditch, if it receives runoff from the public right-of-way, that's one of the kind of qualifying factors. There are others, like it is causing flooding to a structure, or causing imminent damage to a structure. Those are other things that's part of how we would, prioritize that project. So, it's I don't wanna say it's a gray area, but, we approach each situation differently.
So those homeowners maybe should contact you, sit down and talk with you at your office.
Certainly,
Have you look
yes.
at it and see if it's in that gray area or not.
Right, if it's a stream, then that brings in permitting requirements, if it's what we would call a perennial stream or a blue line stream that.
It's a blue line stream, I believe.
Right, and I don't wanna get too far down the rabbit hole on a blue line stream, cause there's.
Let me handle it this way, Mike. So it used to be back in the day, I'll just say back in the day, and this was before Mike was born, and back, cities used to go and clean out ditches, it just willy-nilly just clean them. Post some of and I'm not saying they're bad, but post some of the regulatory stuff, we no longer have the authority to do that without getting special permits. We also, times have changed, we don't have easements on a lot of these streams and ditches are on private property. So we don't have access, we don't have open access to get to those sites. And so it really becomes a private property matter. So it gets a little complicated, and I think that's what you're saying, but people say, well, you used to come through, if anybody, 60 years and older, so the city used to come through and clean the ditch. Well, yeah, we used to, but we can't do that anymore. And so there's regulations with that, and then, so part of the policy decisions will be getting easements, getting access and those kind of things. And whether you spend, your lawyers will advise you, can you spend tax dollars to improve private property? So, it gets real dicey. And Daniel's shaking his hand, so I wish I could give you a better answer. Mike, correct anything I got wrong there.
No, I mean, that's absolutely right. The other, piece of it is what resources we have available to us. Are we gonna hire contractors to do this work? Are we gonna do it with our own internal staff? And so, there's varying cost considerations with each of those. But
I guess each one of those homeowners need to get together and pay for it then, instead of just one homeowner.
Well,
Since no one owns that ditch,
right,
that's what I'm
right.
saying.
Yes, ma'am.
Just runs through.
Any other questions?
Curious about moving forward, how, if the assessments are happening on a rolling basis via CCTV and calls and cameras, right?
So we've done that would be more of like, we've done a lot of the assessment and prioritization, and so we have a list of projects well defined. Now,
Okay.
we also have critical assets that aren't within those defined projects that we would still wanna go do, investigatory work. And another part of this, which is not part of this presentation, but is, what these larger projects, our team, Public Works team is not, they don't specialize in stormwater, large capital stormwater projects. So those are gonna be engineered and contracted. There's parts of the system that potentially our internal staff could tackle some of those projects. And so identifying where we can utilize our own staff would help, that's another part of more of the operation and maintenance side of the picture, which is not separate from the capital improvements, but is kind of a different piece of the program.
Okay, so as it stands right now, the goal is to work through the prioritization list as it stands in as much at a time as we can afford to do, essentially.
So we have the prioritized list. I'm not ready to say we're gonna do the first 5 projects on the list.
Okay.
Because we have to find out, we're working with the budget team to put together a funding strategy. Our funding strategy that we've discussed is not to fund $32 million of projects. So, it's good, but, we just, we can't raise that amount of revenue, and so we have to, we have the prioritized list based on the modeling, based on those things. But do we wanna do 3 projects and then be done, or do we wanna kind of spread it out? So that's the decision we haven't made yet.
Okay, gotcha, thank you, that helps.
What we imagine is, in the budget, the council in previous years, prior to your election, is we established a utility and had a schedule to increase the fee $1 a year until we got $9, I think is what our goal is based on the previous rate study. So where we're doing is looking, okay, we'll have, this year we'll go up another $1, and then which will be $8 if I remember reading correctly. The $8, and then what we will ultimately come back to you is, do we sell revenue bonds on the revenue we've generated? Put a list of projects together and sell bonds on that, or do you just do it on pay as you go based on do we lump a bunch of projects, sell bonds, get a big lump of money, spend that down and pay debt service on that every time? Or do you do 1 or 2 projects at a time based just using cash? And that's really where we're getting to, is to have those discussions, and that'll be policy decisions for council. I think that's.
And the other part of it is, what funding opportunities might come from Helene, through the hazard mitigation or other programs. So you wanna say anything, Mr. Murray?
So on the budget office's planning for some of Mike's capital plans. So we've talked in previous budget meetings and our most recent budget meeting on May 2nd about a $7 million revenue bond to fund the projects initially identified by Mike's master planning processes. So next year with these $32 million projects identified, Mike will be going out for grants, funding opportunities that may be forgivable, may be zero interest. We'll factor those into our models moving forward. And if we need to adjust, we'll bring rate recommendations, financial updates to council on larger projects in the future. Does that help?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
It's killing me. That slide that had the 3 pictures with the criticality, the arrows,
Yeah.
green and the red. that middle picture, was that Third Avenue?
Yes.
Have you been out there lately?
I've been there, I saw it after Helene, yeah. It's
Go look at it again.
washed over. a
I
little
drive
bit.
over it every day.
We'll make sure to take a look at it.
And I keep
I almost
ringing
called you
him
this
about it.
weekend about it, yeah.
Yeah, but please go look at it like ASAP.
Okay.
Well, I think it's one of our, it's one of our, Helene projects, right? I mean, I think Third Avenue repair, I think that's,
I'd have to look at
Oh, I'm sure it is. It's just like every day it gets a little worse and I like really am close to going out with like paint on where the road is starting to get a little saggy. Cause
Okay.
I've noticed, I can see the changes in it.
Well, we'll certainly take a look at it, and, yeah, if it needs to be an
Before it,
emergency repair, then we will. move
Before it
forward
falls
with
out.
that.
And it's Third Avenue West.
Yes, ma'am, right, it's,
Right by the
you cross the
trail.
railroad
Right by the
tracks.
trail.
Yeah.
You like that I can notice it just from that?
I
I
do,
told you I had an eagle eye on it.
As a chiropractor's motto, maintenance pays and repairs cost.
I like that motto.
Yeah, I like
It's,
that one
it's very true.
Maybe we'll adopt that one into our stormwater program.
too. Yep.
You can make it for anything.
Yes,
Maintenance
certainly.
on your health, your mind, your
car.
teeth, your cars. It all,
Stormwater systems.
stormwater systems, yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of deferred maintenance, so we're gonna be playing catch up for a while, so. All right, thanks y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Okay. Right, new business, the special appropriations. Jenny?
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. If you remember at our budget workshop, we didn't have time to do the special appropriations process. And so you have spreadsheets in front of you that have the current allocations that each of you have given to all of the applicants. And so we wanted to take this time to open the floor for discussion, any potential changes, so that the allocations are ready for budget adoption.
so what you have in front of you is a spreadsheet. We have, to make the spreadsheet larger, we have taken out some of the detail, but Jeannie and I have that. We've taken the numbers that you put in your columns, individually, with the budget we gave you, and have that. And then we average them on the column that is in yellow to your, on the kind of the left-hand side of the page there, so you can see what the averages are. You can see farther, and that's a good call because it shows right next to the ask, what was asked by the nonprofit, and then yellow will show you what the average is of the 5 council members. So just, we're here to answer any questions, give you an opportunity to maybe look at it if, if there's some values that look too little or too high, or too little, too high, too low, too high. You can adjust, or if these are acceptable, we will bring them to you for when we adopt the budget on June 5th, because we'll have to take, a couple of these will have to take separate motions because of potential conflicts, so.
And I do just wanna note that the recommended allocation is $155,000, and as it stands right now, we are in line with that allocated budget.
Is the shuffleboard club
Yeah,
still,
do they need
are
that
they
money?
actually taking money now for what?
They are, I know that they are still hosting tournaments, they're just not doing it at Whitmire. So there's a couple different places that they have actual shuffleboards that they're utilizing.
And they will be having their state and national tournament at Whitmire at the end of the summer. We've made arrangements,
Okay.
so.
But they basically, with the $1,250, they turn around and give it to us for rent. It's kind of a wash. So that's, I always ask, give them what they ask for. It's not that much. And they do fund themselves other than the rent they give us, that we give back to them. So I'd like to request that extra $350 for them.
I would like to modify my Hendersonville Community Theater.
Okay.
And I'd like to decrease it by 1,000 and give an extra 1,000 to the Blue Ridge Literacy Council.
Okay.
Just they had substantial damage, and I would like to be able to get us as close to what they've asked for as we can. And I don't know if that 1,000 makes a difference, or if you wanna, or if they should try to do more from some other area, but
So that will bring their allocation up to $4,600.
so.
For Blue Ridge.
Oh, no, sorry,
No.
wrong line. There we go.
See,
There we go. 9,200.
So the only other one on here that I am seeing is like medical loan closet. It would be nice if we could put a little bit more on medical loan closet, cause they were pretty heavily
Absolutely.
impacted as well. I don't know what the difference is. Could we possibly just go ahead and do the full 10,000 for Literacy Connection? Either 2,000 or the full for medical loan closet and the 1,250 for the shuffleboard, so we'll be a little over.
That's your decision.
so say that again, 10,000,
The 10,000 for Literacy Connection
right?
and then the 1,250 for shuffleboard. And then it would be great if we could do the full 2,800 for medical loan closet.
I'm with you.
It's not too far over.
Well, let's.
And then the full 2,800 for medical loan is what you said?
Yeah.
Alright.
Where are we at? 90?
First I wanted to give you more, but it took me over.
Sometimes I just put my column over anyways.
So that will bring us to.
There are no rules.
A total of 158, 120.
I mean, I'm comfortable with that. It's only
How much,
$3,000.
158, 120.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's $3,000. I think Adam and Jenny can find $3,000.
Yes, we can.
Thank you for your
We
confidence.
listen to you.
You guys are experts and you can shoot me very well.
Are we comfortable with that?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
So we will bring this back to you as part of the budget document. That's fine. And also, after tonight, the proposal will be available as part of the budget for the nonprofits, so.
All right, thank you for all the work that went into it. Closed session, someone like to make that motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council enter closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A5 to establish or to instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price and other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease.
Is there any discussion?
That was a short one now.
Not, if not, those in favor of entering closed session say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, motion carries, and we are in